Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World and Financial Juneteenth. And recently there was a study that said that black women are the most educated group of people in America. Now, I've had other conversations about this. I talked to Tia Brown from Ebony Magazine about it, and she had a take on the relationship side and what this says for black men and black women. But I wanted to also talk about the educational side of this and what it means to build a home that is conducive to seeing educational success for your kids. So I reached out to a brilliant woman by the name of Dr. Monikah Ogando. Dr. Ogando has 2 PhDs now, and she is on top of the world when it comes to educational excellence. She grew up in a home where she proudly speaks on how her parents really pushed her to be the best that she could be. She's also the founder of Flourish, which is a conference for women. They have multiple conferences around the country. You can find out more about that at flourishlive.com. So, Dr. Ogando, how are you doing today?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
Good. Well, I'm glad you're here. I wanted to talk to you about this because not only are you an educated person, and not only did you experience the educational push that came from your parents, but you're also a psychologist, and which means you understand the mind, which is the place that gets the education.
Where it all happens.
Where it all takes place, right? So I want to start, I guess, from the beginning and ask you, so you have always done well academically, I assume. You had an environment at home that really pushed you to be the best you could be educationally. You mentioned your father a lot, and I'm sure your mother also did quite a bit to help you get there. Can you start just from the beginning? Maybe let's start before the age of 6. Was there anything special that happened in your household?
Yes.
That let you know from the jump that education was important?
Yes. I was always very precocious and inquisitive, as most children are. The difference, though, is that my parents didn't try to staunch it, didn't try to quench it. They would rather be embarrassed by a rambunctious child than to try to suppress the rambunctiousness of that child for the sake of image. And so that was one. It was very significant. The other thing is that in my country, where I was born, the Dominican Republic, we don't have bell curves. We don't have median average grades. You get the grade that you got, you know. So we don't compare ourselves to the other students or the average of this is what 6th graders are doing nowadays. It's just basically based on your performance. And so also, we had mid-year exams and end-of-year exams, and if you took your mid-year exams and you got a 95 or above grade on all of your classes, you had the option of spending the second half of that year in the next grade. So this happened to me 2 times. In first grade, I took all of my half-year exams, and I got 95 and above and everything, and I had the option of spending the second half of that year in second grade. I took it, or rather, my parents said yes. And then the next year, where I was supposed to be in second grade, I was in third grade. And the same thing happened. I got 95 or above in all of my grades, in all of my classes, and spent the latter half of that year in fourth grade when I was supposed to be in second. So now I'm in fifth grade the next year when I'm supposed to be in third. You with me? So this kept going until we moved to this country. By the time that we got to this country, I was 11 years old in ninth grade. And nobody noticed for the first maybe 2 or 3 months, almost around Christmas time. They were like, wait a minute, what's an 11-year-old doing in high school? So they ran a battery of tests and IQ this and comprehensive that. And my parents had to take a lot of time off of work, and we were new immigrants. So I was the one that was actually translating between the school officials, guidance counselors, principals, test administrators, and my parents, because they didn't speak that well English that well. And what I learned, I mean, I didn't know that being 11, I know that now, was that it is important for a child to feel empowered to make their own decisions as far as what works for them. It just so happened that the way that I learned was very aligned with the way that that the public education system works. Meaning it's very didactic, it's book-based, etc. There are other people, like one of my bonus sons, I call him my bonus sons, one of my husband's sons, who's very kinesthetic. So he learns by doing. He learns by touching things and moving things around. You can't just tell him about it. He has to actually experience it. And so children, a lot of brown children, Black, Latino, Asian children are like that. So what do you do when the school system doesn't foster, doesn't empower a particular learning style? Typically, those children get labeled as either ADHD or, special education, etc. It's like, no, they're geniuses. You just don't recognize it, right? So that's what happened with me growing up, was that my parents were like, we already know you're smart. We just have to figure out how to navigate that. So my parents, the best thing that they did for us as children, I grew up in a family of three, I'm the oldest of three, was that you are smart and that you are resourceful is a foregone conclusion. I don't have to think about this. So it's not that you're smart that we have to wonder. We have to figure out how to have the smart that you are flourish, for lack of a better word.
Interesting.
So that was incredibly fundamental in my own self-identity as I'm a smart person, I'm a resourceful person, I love learning, I like to read. So then all of those other things started to make sense. My parents limited the amount of time that we watched television. If you want to do something fun, go outside and play, and then climb a tree or figure out how to, take apart the car engine or, things like that. And I remember my grandmother, we would come in, in summer vacations, and we would come in and say, I'm bored. And my grandmother used to say, only boring people are bored. Are you saying that you're a boring person? Who wants to admit to that, right? So we would have to find something to do. And that fostered a lot of learning.
Interesting. So, it's interesting. The first part of the conversation, you were referring to the differences in the school system in the Dominican Republic to the United States. And then you mentioned your experience in the American system itself, where you also continue to do quite well. So what of the fact that a large percentage of African Americans don't have access to a good school system? We don't have schools that are going to teach much about Black cultural history, and then they're not going to teach much of anything in many cases. What are some sort of standard basic things that I could do as a parent, each night, each day, each summer, to make sure that my kids are going to be ahead of the curve, that if they have potential, and again, let's in fact, I want to go ahead and respectfully extract your uniqueness, right? You have 2 PhDs, your IQ is probably pretty high too, right? But I'm talking about an average child in an average family with a poor school system. What can I do with that child today? 2 or 3 things that will make the environment more conducive to learning for them.
It's funny that you say that, because when we came to this country, we didn't know what the quality of that particular school system was. We didn't, and even if it was a great school system, there was no way that we could have leveraged it not having the language, right? So one of the foundational things that parents can do is to foster the quality of resourcefulness for their children. Like, it doesn't matter what's in front of you. You're going to make it work. You're going to figure it out. It doesn't matter I don't care if it's bad. I don't care if you don't like it. I don't care if you don't understand. It doesn't matter. You can make it work. And so to have that persistence, to have that stick-to-itiveness, to have that, fostering of creativity, because kids are very creative. If you've ever doubted how creative a kid can be, just tell him that he can't do something that he wants to do, and he will figure it out. He will figure out a way around you, right? So let's channel that creativity to foster their own learning, to foster their education. Limiting, like I said to you, limiting the access to TV. Or if you find that it's nearly impossible to limit access to TV, then at least establish time to talk about it. Because there were a lot of conversations that we had, my parents and I, where it was like, first because they were trying to learn the language, so they wanted to watch American television so they can get used to the cadence of the language. But then the subject matter itself was something to talk about. I remember having conversations about, like, for example, when we were watching Roots. It came out in the 70s, but then when we came to this country a decade later, it was on rerun racket, right? And that was my first experience with organized oppression in this country. That was my first view of, like, oh, maybe America is not that hot, Why do they call it the American, like a promised land when they would treat people this way? I really, really, as an immigrant, I had no idea, especially as a 10-year-old child. When I came to this country, that was my first experience of people do this to each other, you know? So to have those kinds of conversations and to navigate that disappointment, to navigate that cognitive dissonance of this country that you tout like the promised land, and then it's so systematic the way that that some people are oppressed in this country, and still goes on today, and we see it because after we get done watching TV, we're going to go down the street, and when I go to the store, people are looking at me like I'm trying to steal something. How do I process this information? And so to have that kind of conversation with your parents, that's independent of the quality of public education. That's independent of whether your teachers are paying attention to you or whether you have bullies in school, etc. The most important thing that a parent can do for a child is to help them navigate the world that they're in. So ask questions, create discussions, right? And listen, because there's a lot of insights that children have about the way that they process and interpret the world that you may not even know. It's like, wow, this wisdom from my child. I had no idea that he was thinking that way, you know? You have to create space for that.
Interesting. Okay, so you say limit access to television or talk about it. Okay, and what I would consider is the fact that I'm a big believer in what I call extrication. If you think about the word extricate, it means to escape from something, and it also sounds a little bit like education. And then you can also throw in the word extra in addition to, right? And I like that term because I believe you have to supplement your child's education. You can't just let the school system do the work because the school system won't do the work. It doesn't do the work, right? What I see a lot, Dr. Ogando, is I see a lot of parents who send their kids to school every day. Kids come home with good grades, and then when the kid takes the ACT, they get a 12 because they never learned how to read. And so it's clearly a systemic issue, but it's also a cultural issue in that perhaps because the child's parents don't have much education, they don't know when their child's truly being educated and when they're not. And so what I believe in is that in that extra time, you've got plenty of time. Your child spends more time with you than they do at the school. So that means evenings, weekends, summers. That's when you give them that extrication. That's when, and you can do it easily now. We're in the information age. So you can get on Google, pay them $2 or $3, $5 to write reports on Black historical figures. I've done that before and it's worked. Kids like money. Summer programs. There are great summer programs like MS Squared at Phillips Academy, which is math and science.
That's my alma mater.
Phillips. That's right. You did go to Phillips. That's right. Yeah. Well, my brother and sister went to the MS Squared program, but they were there in the summer. They didn't get to do like year round, but that's a great school. I mean, the Kennedys went there, the Bushes, all these amazing families, the Ogandos.
That's right.
And then you've got the weekends, of course, too. And I would argue that we need to continuously push for an absolute revolution in terms of how we see education and seeing it for the absolute gold mine that it is. It bothers me that I'm more likely to see people and families around me where education just sort of just happens. It's like, oh yeah, I send them to school and they learn what they learn, or people say, yeah, I went to that high school, but they're thinking more about what the fact they were on the football team or they met their first girlfriend there, things like that. But it's like, no, this is a gold mine for you. I mean, this is also your opportunity to escape oppression. If you enter this world without an education, you are probably going to be screwed. This economic system's not kind to people who don't foster the value of education in their families. In fact, I believe in the idea of being absolutely fanatical about education. Now, would you say that your parents were educational fanatics?
No, they were critical thinking fanatics. They were very staunch about. I told you, I may have shared this off camera with you before, that my father and my mother never ever defined a word for me. Every time that I would read something, I'm like, what's such and such mean? Look it up. And it got to the point where it was like, what does... Never mind. I would try to find it myself. And then I got used to, I'm going to look for my own answers. And I mean, I can't underscore that enough. It has been the lifesaver. It has opened up so many doors for me. It has put me ahead when it looked like I was at a visible, tangible disadvantage. It has had me learn languages because I speak five. That wouldn't have been possible.
Only five?
Only five, yes, only five. We're learning
Okay.
the sixth one so
Okay,
that we can.
okay, slacker. Please continue.
Uh, but the reason why I feel so compelled to speak on education isn't so much because, oh, she has two PhDs and she speaks five languages. It's because that's only possible out of being intensely curious about the world and having a foundational understanding of, you know what, I can ask powerful questions. And if somebody doesn't have my answers, I can go look for them. And I think that's what's missing in the relationship that parents have to their children's education. We don't, as a generation, people that were born, let's say from the 60s to 80s, we have not, 60s to 70s, learned or mastered the power of directing learning. Right. So we have this thing about, we got to fight the power from a social activism standpoint. But if we take that self-direction also from a position of I'm going to design my own curriculum of learning, my own curriculum of mastery in my life, and then pass that on to our children, that's the biggest gift that my parents gave me. And so for parents now who say, yeah, okay, no, my children do not spend more time with me than they do at school. I'm always working because I'm trying to make ends meet. And so when they come home from school, I'm not there. And when they're getting ready to go to sleep, that's when I'm just coming into the house. So insert this self-reliance that kids have to have anyways because you're not there because you're working. Use that as part of their training. We have to remember that the present school system as it is now was really just a substitute to give children something to do while, because in the winter there's no harvest. In an agricultural society, you came out in the summer and you harvested everything and then you planted some stuff for the next season. And then what? You have nothing to do. Oh, well, send them to school so they can keep busy. So this school system as it is now has never been designed to help you do anything except keep you busy. So if you already know that, then okay, now you can design your own curriculum. Now you can, harvest or harness your curiosity about the world. That children already come with that, manufacturer installed. You don't have to get kids curious. They already are.
Interesting. Well, I agree with you. I think that kids are very curious. Kids are also being educated constantly. Everything that's entering into their brain is part of the educational process.
Mm-hmm.
And what is so interesting to me is that if you're not trying to educate your kids, there's a rapper on the radio who would be glad who will be glad to do the job for you. There you go.
And gets paid well for it.
Exactly. Love and hip hop will educate your kids. That TV show, the reality TV shows. In fact, this is kind of funny. I was talking to a young. Well, it's not funny. It's funny in a way that makes you cry. I was talking to a young woman about. She was asking me for relationship advice, and she didn't have a dad, so she was asking me like fatherly advice. So, of course, I was being the mean old, nasty old man, saying no, no boy
It's
is
your
good
job,
enough, and
cantankerous.
beat them boys away with a stick, blah blah blah. So anyway, so when she was trying to reiterate her understanding of something I explained to her about making good relationship choices, she said something like, she said, well, Stevie J and Jocelyn on Love and Hip Hop, that's where they're having problems because sometimes they do X Y Z in their relationship and it doesn't work out, and I couldn't help but stop and I said, oh my God, I know I don't watch the show, but we report on everything at Your Black World, so I keep up with everything happening in the black community. And Stevie J is an absolute mess. This man, has a drug problem. He's $1 million in debt from child support because he's got all these kids everywhere. He's doing all these things that are just entirely horribly disruptive to a healthy life.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to be condescending, but I said, I don't think you want Stevie J and Jocelyn to be your model of a healthy relationship. That's not a healthy situation. But what I reflect on with that is that's where she learned about love, from Love and Hip Hop, because she may not, she may be 20 years old, reading at a, ninth grade level or whatever. A lot of kids are. But when it comes to reality television, she's an expert. When it comes to reciting every song on the radio, she's an expert. And that means that she's been educated. But what has she been educated on?
Hmm.
And so I think that we have to be thoughtful about what our kids are being educated on and realize that you have to feed them healthy food because every day when they step out of your house, they're being fed poison. Period. Not from everything they do, but from a lot of the things they do.
Hmm.
So it requires some deliberation. I think
Yes.
kids like you are not created by accident. Oh, I'm gonna call you a kid because you look like you're 25 anyway. So
Thank you. Thank you. You know
so
what they say, it doesn't crack.
there you go. Black does not crack. So I will let you get the last word in, Dr. Ogando. What last piece of advice would you have for that mother who's watching who just really wants something better for their child?
I think the best thing that parents can do for their children is to elevate themselves. Sometimes the reason why we as parents do not push our children is because we don't have that level of education, or we don't have that level of achievement. So it's like, what moral authority do I have to tell my kid to go for something that I didn't go for myself, or
Mm-hmm.
that I don't have time to pursue myself? And I think that use that. One of the reasons why I got into reading so much is because I saw my father reading. What are you reading? The newspaper. But still, it was like, it was something to do. And it was a way for me to spend time with my father because he was always so busy. He was always working, especially when we came to this country. I hardly ever saw my father. He was always working second shift. And so by the time I woke up, he was sleeping. By the time I came home, he was gone. And so to use what you already know. Your children, above everything else, want to know that you love them and want to know that everything's going to be all right. And so if you can just use that to direct them, right? You've heard me say before, all we're ever doing as human beings is managing our own orientation. And so you can either learn, those love and hip hop or whatever else you mentioned. You can learn
Mm-hmm.
that, or you can learn the classics. You can learn how to play an instrument. You can learn how to climb a tree. You can learn how to build a house. You can learn other things that can sustain you later, regardless of whether something stays on TV for several seasons or not. Um, and that requires from the parents some self-reflection as to, okay, this is where I'm not, right? Maybe I didn't go to school, maybe I didn't go to college. I can't tell my kid to go to college if I didn't. That's fine. Admit that. They know. Your kids know when you're being incongruent, but if you admit it, you get their respect because you're being honest.
Mm.
So definitely use that, and remember that this system is designed to be a distraction. They're not doing anything wrong. They're doing what they're so designed to do. So if you
Well,
know that, then, claim your own stake and design your curriculum.
I think that's great advice. And, just hearing you talk about people who don't necessarily have all the education, pushing their kids to be great. I'm reminded of two very, very quick examples. One, my late grandmother, rest her soul. If you watch any of my other videos, I talk about my grandma all the time. That's my way of keeping her alive. And
Gosh.
she had an associate's degree that she was very proud of, but she never got a chance to really get the education she wanted. She never got a chance to make the money she wanted. She never got a chance to have the career and the life she wanted. She was a single woman from the age of 19 on up. She got divorced at 19. She threw my grandfather out for whatever reason. And even though she was a single mom with 4 or 5 kids, or sorry, 5 kids, sorry, she raised the kids on her own and never had to borrow money from anybody. Always had perfect credit. People would come to her and borrow money from her because she always took good care of her money and she always understood the value of education. So a couple of things she always impressed upon me was twofold. One, get as much education as you can. You got to do it. And that's what inspired me to do what I did. That's what inspired my sister to become a doctor. That's what inspired my brother to go to an Ivy League school.
Hmm.
So we got a chance to live her dream in our lives. And then she also told me, pick a career that you love. You don't want to spend your life doing something you hate. So
Hmm.
I did that. I made sure that whatever career I picked, I loved it. And she also said, take care of your money. And she literally gave me all kind of lists of financial advice. Even when I had a PhD in finance, she was like,
Hmm.
"Here's what you need to do: number one, number two, number three." And I listened. I listened because she knew what she was talking about.
Yeah.
And so I guess I bring that example up because I think that we have to understand that you don't have to necessarily have done it yourself to
Yeah.
inspire someone else to do better than you, or to
That's
not even
right.
do better than you, but to do the things that maybe you wish you'd done, things you learned in hindsight. That's what progress is supposed to be. And the other fast example, I'll say it faster than I stated the last one. Was as I know a woman named Dr. Mary Stoddard who she's like you. She has a couple of big degrees. She has a JD and a PhD, and she was so determined that she actually had a baby on Tuesday and walked across the stage on Wednesday because she
I love
wasn't going to
that.
miss her graduation. She also happened to have 5 kids, and all of her kids are I think 3 of her kids have PhDs or MDs, and all of them straight A students all the way through, skip grades, all this craziness, and you would think she was born with a silver spoon in her mouth, but she wasn't. Her
Mm.
parents were sharecroppers, literally sharecroppers. I think her dad had a 6th grade education, mother had a 5th grade education, something like that. Something that's not,
Yeah.
you know, they didn't go to Harvard. Let's say that they had 11 kids. They didn't have much money at all, and all 11 kids graduated from college. And their parents set up a very simple model. They said, the first one who goes to school, you're going to send money back to pay for the second one. The second one, you're going to help send money back to pay for the third. And all the kids that graduate are going to help pay for the kids behind them to go to school. So all of them ended up finishing college. And that was all bootstrapped by the brilliance of 2 people that didn't have more than a 6th grade education. So
Hmm.
you ain't got to have it to make sure your kids get it.
That's
And
exactly
that's
right.
my point in that long-winded example. And I hope it was worth it.
It was, yeah, yeah. My parents are living proof of that. They, to this day, 30 years later, they still have not yet mastered the English language, for example.
Hmm.
But I'm over here speaking 5 of them. So yeah,
Mm.
absolutely.
Look
You,
at you.
yeah,
Wow. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Ogando.
you're very welcome.
You're always so helpful. And everybody, I want you to go check out Dr. Ogando's website. It's flourishlive.com. And she has a great conference for women that I really think you should check out. She's also an all-around smart person, so we're gonna talk a lot, and she's gonna send over different kinds of content. And so, if you can't afford to go to college, you have no excuse. You got 2
Go to
professors.
Flourish.
There you go. Go to Flourish, and you got 2 professors right here that are always willing to talk to you and share. So, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World. Please take care. God bless, and have a wonderful day. We are gone. Peace.